Does Nike need rappers or do rappers need Nike? Because the two of them link up constantly. And I'm not talking about occasionally. I'm talking about a strategy that survives leadership purges, stock market crashes, and cultural shifts. Now, consider the stakes. This is a machine that moves 800 million pairs of shoes a year. The Jordan 1 isn't just a shoe, it's a $1 billion annual economy. The Air Max 90 moves 20 million units a year alone. Now, these aren't experimental side projects. These are products that keep the lights on at Swoosh. And yet, these are the exact products that they hand over to rappers. Now, it's not just Nike. Adidas does it too. Puma rebuilt a brand on it as well. So the question isn't, why do brands like rappers? The real question is, why does a risk-averse, multi-billion-dollar industry trust its most critical assets to the most volatile figures in pop culture? Now, that needs explaining, and that's exactly what I'm going to do on this episode of Collab Lab with Bimma. Now, the easy explanation is culture. Rappers drive attention, they shape taste, and they do create moments. So it's tempting to say this is just about hype. But that explanation starts to break the moment that you look at the timeline, because the hype is actually dying. Now, rap music's chart dominance has been shrinking. In 2025, Billboard reported 0 rap songs in the Hot 100 Top 40 for weeks at a time. Now, the genre's market share fell from nearly 30% to roughly 24%. Hits are getting smaller. Cycles are getting shorter. Now, by standard business logic, this is when a brand pivots. When a trend cools off, you stop investing, you move to the next growth sector. But Nike didn't move, they dug in. So if rap is cooling off, why is Nike still betting on rappers? Look at the dates. Drake signed with Jordan Brand in 2013. More than a decade later, Nocta is still releasing seasonal collections. Not once and not occasionally, but repeatedly. Now look at Travis Scott. He first appeared with Nike in 2017. He's remained attached to the Air Force One and the Jordan 1 for nearly 8 years, arguably accelerating even as the music charts have slowed down. If it were driven by hype alone, the sneaker should have faded with the charts, right? But the products, they don't rotate. And marketing strategies usually reset when leadership changes. Nike changed CEOs multiple times. Now, they shifted aggressively towards direct-to-consumer. Then they reversed course. And through all of that chaos, the rapper-linked products kept shipping. So at this point, the culture explanation starts to wobble a bit. Hype doesn't last a decade. Trends don't survive stock market crashes. I couldn't stop thinking about this. If the music is the fuel and the tank is running low, how is the car still speeding up? How are these partnerships surviving without the charts to back them up? Now, I had to find this out, so I went to look at the mechanics. So to understand how this machine actually works, I wanted to see what happens when the system actually breaks. So I looked at the most extreme case on the books, Travis Scott. In 2021, the market didn't just shrink, it caught fire. After Astroworld, the risk profile around Travis, it didn't just change, it became toxic. Public scrutiny was intense. Looking at the headlines, it felt like a termination event. In any normal endorsement model, this is where the machine ejects the spokesperson to save itself. But I watched what Nike actually did, and it wasn't an exit. It was a recalibration. They paused, but only for 6 months. While the public narrative was still burning, the internal machine was already restarting. And this wasn't just a switch being flipped. This was a massive industrial operation spinning back up. Think about the logistics involved here. Just like an automotive plant needs steel and microchips, a global sneaker release needs massive lead times. Factories in Vietnam, they have to be booked 18 months out. Materials, leather, rubber, tooling, they have to be sourced and staged. SKU numbers, they have to be reactivated in systems across North America, Europe, and Asia. And if Nike actually intended to stock, those supply lines would have been cut. The orders, they would have been canceled. But they weren't. The line stayed hot. The inventory was held and it wasn't burned. By May 2022, the partnership resumed. They then ramped up the efficiency. Now, more Jordan releases followed. apparel continued, and by 2024, the relationship didn't just recover, it escalated into a signature sneaker, the Jumpman Jack. Now, Nike invested in new tooling, and they even dedicated R&D for this partnership. Now, I gotta be honest, watching this timeline makes me wonder about the rules of business. The volatility was extreme, the uncertainty was long-lasting, yet the machine didn't just survive the stress test, it ran harder. And why? With the destruction like this, how is it possible that the partnership didn't actually collapse? And the reason is simple. The machine is too big to stop. So let's look at the sheer volume here. This is what 60 million pairs of shoes looks like. That is roughly the annual output of Jordan Brand. And we aren't looking at hype anymore. We are looking at a manufacturing machine. In peak years, they don't just release 1 or 2 shoes. They release dozens of retro versions, 80, 90 different styles in a single year. And here's the key. Most of them are all the same shoe. They use the same molds, the same stitch patterns, and the same blueprint since '85. The silhouette is the standard asset that allows them to print money. Now, look where the rapper fits into this picture. When Travis Scott shows up, he doesn't require a new factory. He doesn't build a new foundation. He returns to the existing one. From 2019 onward, every Travis Jordan 1 has just been a remix of the same shoe that's already been on the schedule. Aha, we're getting somewhere. Now, the collaboration isn't the business. It isn't the supply chain, and it isn't the engine. It's just a fresh coat of paint on a machine that is already running at a massive scale. And this isn't reactive. These releases are locked 18 to 24 months in advance. Factory capacity, materials, leather, sourcing, it's all committed long before the cultural moment even happens. So when you look closely, the collaboration, it isn't interrupting the machine. It's ensuring the machine has a reason to keep running. So not why do rappers work, but what job are rappers doing inside the sportswear business? Now, why is making a brand new sneaker from scratch a risky business? Well, the answer is in the numbers. And the first problem is the cost. Creating a brand new sneaker from scratch is a huge gamble. Before they sell a single pair, brands have to pay for the steel molds. And a single metal mold for the bottom of a shoe costs thousands of dollars per size. To make a full size range, you need about 15 of them. So just to cut the steel, a brand spends $40,000 to $75,000 before they even start stitching the fabric. And if the shoe flops, the steel is useless. It's just expensive scrap metal. Then you have to look at the calendar. Sneakers move slow. Trends move fast. The standard timeline is roughly 18 months from an idea to the store shelf. So let's do the math. That means the sneakers launching today were decided on 2 years ago. And by the time that shoe actually gets made, the cool moment that inspired it is probably over with. So even the fastest companies take 6 months, which is still a lifetime on TikTok. And that leads to the ugliest reality, the graveyard. In this business, failure is normal. About 75% of new sneaker models, they disappear within 1 year. And most new designs that launch, they sell for a few months and then they vanish. But the old classics, the Air Force One, Jordan 1, Dunk, they make up most of the money. They use the same molds, they use the same factories. And they are safe bets because people already want them. So this creates a trap. New ideas are expensive. They take too long to make. And they usually fail. So brands stick to what works. They keep making the old shoes, not because it's creative, but because it's smart business. The Air Force One has been using the same tool since '82. It's pure profit. And this creates a problem. A business built on 40-year-old designs is safe, but it lacks the one thing fashion actually needs: excitement. And that brings us to the unavoidable question. If brands can't afford to replace their old shoes, how do they keep it from feeling old? Now, once you pull back, the pattern becomes even clearer. Adidas, they do the same thing. When they work with artists, they don't put them on weird experimental running shoes at first. They put them on the Samba, the Gazelle, the Superstar, shoes from the 50s and 60s that they still make every single day. And Puma, they follow the same logic. When they partnered with Rihanna, they didn't put her on some new high-tech shoe. They used the Suede, a shoe from '68. It was a shoe people already knew and in stores that already existed. Now, New Balance is more careful, but the strategy is the same. Collaborators don't get brand new designs. They get 990s and 550s, the models that already make the most money. Now, this repetition matters. These companies don't share bosses or strategies, but they do share a business reality. Over the last 10 years, the big money shifted. Growth isn't coming from high-tech running shoes anymore. It's coming from lifestyle, old shoes worn for style, not sports. These shoes sell huge volumes and they are much safer to make. Now, at the same time, actual invention, it didn't disappear, it just moved. Brands like Hoka and On, they took the lead in modern running. They spent the money to invent new foams and new shapes, and they took the risk. The big giants didn't stop inventing entirely, but they focused their size somewhere else. Because financially, old products, they act very differently than new ones. A new technical shoe, it requires years of testing, new molds, and expensive materials. You have to teach people why it's good. A retro model, it uses tools you already have. It uses factories that they already know. The development costs, they're already paid for. And the demand, it's already there. So that difference changes the incentives altogether. It becomes safer to remind people what they already like rather than betting the business on something totally new. And once those incentives line up across stores and factories and finance teams, the behavior, it spreads. Now, this is why rapper partnerships don't land on new experiments. They land on Sambas, they land on 990s and retro Jordans. The system isn't searching for the next big thing. It's protecting the one thing it already has. Now, up to this point, everything we've looked at, it creates pressure. The same collaborators keep showing up on the same old shoes and across different brands. Even when artists are risky, even when trends change. At that scale, this stops looking like taste and you start looking at it as a function. What these collaborations are doing isn't inventing something totally new. They are protecting something that's old. And there's a name for this pattern, the relevance reset. Now, the relevance reset is when a brand uses a partner to make an old product feel new again, instead of inventing a new one. Now, here's how this whole cycle works. Step one, there's the anchor. The brand has a classic shoe like the Air Force One. It makes a lot of money, but it risks getting boring. It doesn't need to be fixed, it just needs to be noticed. So step two comes the spark. The brand adds a collaborator. They don't replace the shoe, they just add some energy to it. They point the camera at the thing that they already own. So step three becomes the reset, the excitement around the artist. That's what reminds people why they like the shoe in the first place. The belief is refreshed and the shoe is selling for like another 5 years. So once you see those steps, the whole picture, it starts to snap into focus. Now, the reason that rappers keep landing on old shoes, it isn't because brands are lazy, it's because those shoes carry the weight of the business. Air Force Ones don't need new technology. Sambas don't need new designs. What they need is belief. And collaboration is the machine that creates that belief. The relevance reset, it explains why the same partners keep coming back. It explains why they stick to the old stuff. And it explains why they put up with the chaos of a risky rapper, because the goal isn't to gamble on the future. The goal is to protect what already works. So at this point, the behavior stops being confusing. It becomes very clear. And now that the system has a name, we can finally see its limits. And that's where things start to break. No machine runs without limits, and this system has a cost. The relevance reset, it runs on attention, and attention is finite. When the same silhouette gets reset too many times, the effect, it actually weakens and scarcity starts to feel completely manufactured. Resale premiums soften and the once felt special begins to feel routine. We've already seen what happens when the system completely breaks down. The Adidas and Yeezy collapse, it wasn't a design failure. The shoes didn't subtly become undesirable. And manufacturing, it didn't stop working. What failed was balance. One partner became structurally central to too much of the business. And when that relationship broke, the reset mechanism, it wasn't a pause, it was like a reset. Adidas was left with millions and billions of dollars of unsold inventory, not because the products changed, but because belief detached from the system that had been sustaining this whole thing. Now, that's a boundary. The relevance reset works best when the belief system is distributed, when it's refreshed from multiple sources, when no one single partner becomes too important to lose. Now, you can already see the signs of this adoption. Brands aren't abandoning the system. They're spreading risk across athletes, musicians, designers, creators to test the regional figures and the small cultural nodes. Now, not because the old approach was wrong, but because its effectiveness depends on balance. Too little reset and the legacy products, they will fade. Too much reset and the signal, it collapses. So this isn't a story that's about loving rappers. This isn't a story about hype. This is a story about how a massive industry maintains belief in its most valuable assets under high costs, long timelines, and constant risk. The relevance reset works under specific conditions and for a limited window. And where this stops working tells you just as much about the system as where it does.